Mark my words, this time next month the MDC Alliance would have imploded. Their center can no longer hold. The ceremony of innocence has been drowned, the egos have finally landed and crashed. The great concern is not about their rapture. The concern is the violent chemical reaction of that rapture. It's like, you ever seen the splitting of an atom? Remember the Hiroshima story? Violence only breeds more violence. If you need violence to enforce your ideas, then your ideas are worthless. Mahatma Gandhi said, intolerance is itself a form of violence and an obstacle to the growth of a true and democratic spirit. History tells us that Lobengula used endemic violence to suppress the Shona tribes, a concoction of violence, political fraud, and deception to colonize and oppress all native groups was used by the settler regime that came here in 1890. The same oppressive prescription was used by their descendants to maintain minority rule under the Rhodesian government. Violence was used to overthrow white supremacy, and after independence, it was used to crush any possibility of legitimate political opposition. For over 150 years in this country, violence has gone through its cycles of political dispensations. It seems to be something we have been passing down from generation to generation. Every generation in this country has had to deal with widespread violent contact in one way or the other. On social media, the hashtag generational consensus has been trending. What I think is what we are calling the generational consensus is not the right consensus we should be making. As a nation, we need to make a consensus to establish tolerance and build peace. That's the only way we get to grow and prosperity follows without us needing to put in much work or focus on anything else. Today, the democratic outfit of MDC, with military-style bar general decorated vanguard, have become the single most violent outfit in the country, a terrorism outfit, confessed by its leader in yesterday's Newsday interview. Check it out. Terrorism is defined as the use of violence or intimidation to achieve political aims. It's not the violence that makes my stomach turn. It's who we are becoming violent towards. When we were little boys, while the girls stood in a corner chatting, we removed our ties and flicked at each other like pseudo samurais. We arm wrestled for sport and full-on fights in the schoolyards where all arguments were settled about anything. But when you saw any girl, even one you did not like, being abused by a boy, you jumped into that fight to her defense, even if it meant putting your own little life at risk. No matter how violent we become, there was never justification to violence against women or against children. Today, we not just cheer it on, we gloat about how violent we can be towards women. Our faces light up at the sight of a woman defeated by the sheer God-given strength of our arms over women, as if God gave us stronger arms so that we use them in hurting women instead of protecting them. The dispute is not about can a woman look after herself against a man. The point is we shouldn't even be having that dispute. I've never supported MDC because of ideological bias, but I respected its founding principles of a politics that battled strength and potency of ideas. Sadly, that MDC is not there anymore, and MDC has become everything that Zanu PF was. For 13 years, the most senior MDC officials have been warning us about the violence taking root in MDC. In the course of 13 years, the seeds of violence and the justification of it have now taken deep root, grown strong barks and large reaching branches, producing their own flowers of viral violence with steroid of digital virility. Don't take my word for it. The most recognized names in MDC, 2001, Priscilla Musiairambu, Gabriel Chaiba, Edwin Mushoriwa, were assaulted while attending a provincial executive meeting in Zivarasekwa. 2004, Bulima MP Moses Muzila reported assault to the police. Innocent Gonesa, senior MDC official, said, and I quote, "Commitment to non-violence earned us deep respect, but at the attempted murder of Guhu and the 2005 violence, our credibility was seriously undermined." Professor Washman Ncube told Miles Tendi in a London interview that violence was chief to his reasons for splitting from MDC in 2005. I quote, "When these youth were not effectively used in mass action, then they became readily available like an army waiting to be deployed to anyone who wanted to hire them against an opponent." This is Professor Washman Ncube, the Secretary General of the party at the time. He went on to say, "We saw an increasing tended act towards dictatorship and violence in MDC." This is not just an ordinary person speaking. This is the founding father and architect of MDC. 2006, Trudy Stevenson, the ambassador, was attacked by Tondera India, leaving her battered and bruised after a pro-Senate meeting in Mabuku. 2010, Toende Pishone, then the party's Director General. He's assaulted right outside of Harvest House. Kerry Kay, in 2011, the party's Deputy Secretary for Welfare, wrote articulately about the party's history of violence, which was ignored by senior party members because the thing with violence in MDC is senior party officials are always implicated. February 2014, Tendai Biti and Youth Chair Solomon Madzore, they escape assault outside of Harvest House. The same month, Elton Mangoma with Promise Mukwananzi are publicly assaulted outside of Harvest House. March 2014, Angela Wanyanya attacked again at Harvest House. Tonight, it warned us how the MDC has abandoned its value of non-violence, and the party they called the MDC was now not recognizable. It was Tendai Biti who said, and I quote, "MDC was now a party totally working against the people of Zimbabwe." In his press statement, Tendai Biti went on to say, even people who committed murder and rape were not treated the same way MDC members are treated when they disagreed or voiced their opinion in MDC. May 29, 2015, Police Inspector Petros Mutenda was killed by suspected MDCT supporters at Glenview 3 Shopping Center after having gone there to investigate ongoing MDC violence in the area. The chairman of MDC, Love Momoyo, the chairman of MDC, he quit MDC for reasons he stated. He could not stay in a party that was violent, tribalist, and sexist. David Coulthard, in his memoirs, wrote, and I quote again, he said, "If we do not send out a clear and unequivocal message that violence would not be tolerated, we would reduce the standing of MDC to that of Zanu-PF." That's 20 years of violent morphing. You are no longer talking about elements of violence. You're now dealing with the disease. In 20 years, you have not only gone through primary and secondary education, you're now working on a degree in your pursuit or whatever field you're studying. The vanguard of MDC is committed to gross violence. You will remember last year, Thokozani Kupe's office, where youth with pride were ready to kill her. The leader of MDC Youth Vanguard would then make a video justifying his violent ways. Again, do not take my word for it. Read the report put together by senior party officials Giles Mutsekwa, Moses Msika, and the now late Tichaona Mudzingwa, which interviewed those implicated in the violence and those who were a victim of it. What has allowed violence to rampage above all else is that those who commit horrendous crimes are brought to book but prosper through their actions. It's now a deeply embedded issue in our national psyche that political violence is the norm. Jim Kunaka, former youth leader in Zanu-PF, would attack his subordinates with button sticks. Hamandisha would go into full engaged fistfights with members of his executives in Zanu-PF. Temba Maliswa would burn people's yards and threaten rape in the name of political governance. There's so much. There is so much we put our women through. And there is still so long to go in teaching our young girls that they too can dream to become presidents and achieve as high as our young boys can. I get that. But these women are our daughters. They look up to us as heroes even when we spend most of their lives absent and disengaged. They are our sisters who fend for us, our mothers who nurture us, and in most cases, in the absence of our fathers. These women are our wives who stay loyal to us, even when we betray their love and their trust. These women are the best of what the society has. I'm not asking you to favor them. I'm not asking you to give them special treatment. I'm asking you to recognize them the same way you want to be recognized. Now, I hear a lot of people say, oh, if you do this, then we'll be violent. If you don't do that, then we'll be violent. But violence is not the solution. It's the problem. I'm a Zanu PF prodigy, so believe me, I understand the reasoning that says non-violence doesn't always work. You're right. But neither does violence. So I object to violence because when it appears to do good, the good is only temporary. The evil it does is permanent. Mistakes have been made, especially under the past leadership of Comrade Mugabe. However, it is becoming crystal clear that President Mnangagwa is a different man altogether. Even those who don't like ZANU-PF can agree that ZANU-PF has brought its political violence to a zero under ED rule. ED is so committed to a clean play, the man yesterday signed for the first time that the EU can send an observer mission with full observer status. We haven't had this since 2000, when Pierre Chiraud was the EU head of commission. Now people will say, oh, Acie was sent by CLO, oh, he must be ZANU-PF, oh, we must kill him. But believe it or not, just because I disagree with MDC doesn't make me an agent of ZANU-PF. The highest members of the MDC party have warned the country about MDC violence for 15 years. If they could see it and you can't, ask yourself why. There's nothing powerful about violence towards women. It's weakness on your part as a man, and especially on your stability as a thinker. So I guess the message is, let's end political violence. But until you stop vilifying women, until the leader Nelson Chamisa deals with Charlton Wende, chief architect of violence against Kupe, by demoting him instead of replacing him in Chamisa's own constituency, MDC, you don't have my vote. See you all next week. Hi guys, thank you for supporting the Lumumba Files. To make sure you don't miss a show, press the subscribe button below and the notification button, that's the one with the little bell, and you will always get told when I put up a show. Thank you for watching. Head bowed.